Iran's top clerical assembly has reportedly agreed on a new supreme leader to succeed the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Reports suggest Khamenei's son, Mojtaba, has been chosen, but there has not been a formal announcement yet. U.S. President Donald Trump says whoever the new chief is, he will, quote, not last long. Both the U.S. and Israel are pledging to kill Iran's leaders. This comes as Israel's military targeted fuel depots around the capital.
Toxic smoke darkens the sky in Tehran after Israel launched attacks on several oil storage sites in the capital. It's the first time Iran's oil infrastructure has been targeted in the war. Iran's foreign ministry called the strikes chemical warfare. Residents were told to stay indoors as the fumes can cause damage to the eyes and lungs. This truck driver describes the moment of impact.
The first missile hit right over there. And then the gasoline started flowing towards the residential areas. All the vehicles the guys had parked here, non-military, were caught in the fire, and they ended up burning.
This footage posted on social media is said to show flaming oil tearing through a boulevard in Tehran. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have warned that if attacks on their energy infrastructure don't end, they will respond with similar actions in the region. Launching fresh attacks on Israel, the Guards also claim they can sustain an intense war against Israel and the U.S. for 6 months. Iran's foreign minister has vowed to keep attacking U.S. sites in neighboring countries.
It is Americans who started this war against us, attacking us, and we are defending ourselves. So it is obvious that our missiles cannot reach the U.S. Soil. What we can do is to attack American bases and American installations around us, which are unfortunately in the soils of our neighborly countries.
Israel has warned it will strike Iran's rulers without mercy as the war continues to escalate.
Firefighters in Kuwait City say they've brought several fires under control after strikes by Iranian missiles and drones. The overnight attacks hit the capital's airport and a government tower housing offices for social welfare. Separately, Kuwait's Interior Ministry says that 2 of its border guards were killed, quote, while performing duties. It did not provide further details. We can now speak to Giorgio Cafiero. He is the CEO and founder of Gulf State Analytics, which is a geopolitical risk think tank based in Washington, D.C., and he's also an assistant professor at Georgetown University. Welcome to DW. So as we just saw, Iran's attacks on the Gulf states are continuing. How are the Gulf governments balancing the need to protect their territory with a desire, of course, to avoid being drawn deeper into this conflict?
Yeah, thank you for having me back on your program. This is a nightmarish scenario for the 6 GCC states. And I think right now it's important to realize that these countries, especially the Sultanate of Oman, invested so much into their efforts to help the United States and Iran avert this conflict. They definitely understood how much a scenario like this would negatively impact their national security and their economic interests. Everything they warned about is playing out right now. I think at this point, the GCC states are very much focused on trying to de-escalate. They are very angry that the United States chose to enter into this conflict. They see this as really a war of choice, very unnecessary, very dangerous. But at the same time, they have to deal with the reality of the current situation in which Iran has chosen to retaliate against the GCC states based on the Iranian narrative that they have played a role in helping the United States wage this war against Iran by hosting military bases that house American troops. There is definitely a war of narratives going on right now. There is a fair amount of disinformation from Israeli networks and Iranian networks. I think on the Israeli side, there's an effort to prevent the GCC states and Iran from reaching some sort of a ceasefire. On the Iranian side, I think there's definitely misinformation being pushed, accusing the GCC states of coordinating and cooperating with the U.S. war on Iran in ways that are not true. So the GCC states are caught in an incredibly awful situation right now. What's going on poses nothing short of an existential threat to their economies, especially at a fragile period in which they're trying to diversify away from oil and gas through these ambitious visions, such as Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia.
I'm just wondering, though, what would it take for them to strike back directly against Iran?
Well, a couple of the GCC states have suggested that that is something that they may have to do if these Iranian attacks against targets in the Gulf continue. I think, though, the GCC states will be very careful about that. There can be perceptions among their own populations, as well as populations throughout the wider Arab world, wider Islamic world, that they are in de facto alignment with Israel against Iran. So the rulers in these Gulf Arab monarchies have to be sensitive to how those dynamics can play out in Arab and Muslim societies. At the same time, I think there's also a risk that if some Arab states begin taking military action against Iran, that could serve to further unite the Iranians even more than they are right now. So I certainly think it could happen. And the more Iran targets these GCC countries, that risk increases. But I also think the Gulf Arab states would be careful before taking such action.
I want to ask you about Iran reportedly choosing Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's son to become the next supreme leader. What can you tell us about him?
Well, more than anything about him as an individual, I think what this likely selection says about what's going on in the Islamic Republic is very important. I think that this sends out a strong message that despite the assassination of the supreme leader, the Islamic Republic's system of governance is still together, and that despite the Israeli ambition of overthrowing the Iranian regime, and possibly that's also the ambition of the Trump administration as well, the Islamic Republic is still standing and it's moving ahead to replace the supreme leader killed earlier this month. And, Donald Trump himself said that he needs to have a say in who the next leader of Iran is. I think this is a strong message from the Iranian government that Iran, despite these extreme scenarios, is still a sovereign country, and it is the Iranian authorities in Tehran who decide who the next leader is, not a foreign leader, especially the leader of a country that is waging a war against the Islamic Republic.
Well, Donald Trump has said he wasn't seeking negotiations to end the conflict. So are there any diplomatic channels that are still open that could possibly help de-escalate the situation?
Well, bringing us back to what we started this discussion with, the Gulf states are definitely wanting to play a diplomatic role here and to play this bridging role between Washington and Tehran in the interest of de-escalating this nightmarish crisis as soon as possible. The issue, though, is on both the American and the Iranian sides, there is not a desire to talk right now. I think both sides believe it's in their own respective interests to continue fighting. Later on, that calculation may change, but right now, neither the Trump administration nor the Iranian leadership wants to talk. And I think within this context, we don't really have any reason to be optimistic about some sort of a diplomatic breakthrough anytime soon. And that's very, very unfortunate.
That was Middle East analyst Giorgio Cafiero. Many thanks indeed for your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, for more, we're joined now by Professor Sina Azodi. He's Director of Middle East Studies at the Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington University. Professor Azodi, welcome to DW. In your assessment, what is Iran's strategic objective in continuing these missile and drone attacks on its neighbors in the Gulf? What does Tehran think it will gain from this kind of escalation?
Well, the first thing that we have to keep in mind is that it is not a knee-jerk reaction without any thoughts. I think that they have been planning for this for a while, and the objective, in the absence of ability to target U.S. mainland, is to create chaos and increase pressure on the GCC countries to rush and to urge use their influence to urge President Trump to stop the fighting. Their thinking, from my perspective, is that by not giving the United States a decisive victory, they can come out of the conflict with bruises, but they can survive. That's the mentality in Tehran, and this is why they're escalating to pressure the Arabs to use their influence to ask President Trump to stop the war.
Well, the casualties in the Gulf countries are continuing to rise, and so far that has not impacted the behavior of the United States. So just how much longer can Kuwait and also Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain endure these Iranian strikes without retaliating? I mean, what would it take for them to strike directly against Iran?
Well, the civilian casualties are increasing everywhere in Iran and the GCC and, of course, Israel. So civilian casualties for everybody, unfortunately. But I'm not sure. I don't have any direct insights into how the GCC leaders think. But based on the conversations that I've had with friends and colleagues in the GCC countries, is that their lives have been affected, they've been interrupted, and there's a growing public opinion to pressure their governments, the GCC governments, to do something. This is why you see that the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, apologized to the GCC countries. Despite facing some criticism at home, he decided to apologize to the Arab countries. I think that they don't want to undermine this path of reconciliation that they've walked over the years with the GCC. But again, I don't know what it would take for the Arabs to do something, but I think Iranians have clearly seen that it could risk the intervention of the GCC.
There were some earlier reports that the UAE struck a desalination plant inside Iran. Now, Abu Dhabi has strongly denied this in the meantime. But how is Iran interpreting these types of reports?
I have yet to see that. We do know that there was a desalination facility in Qeshm Island that was struck by either the Americans or the Israelis. But I think that this we should not. We should take these isolated incidents very seriously, because civilian targets are now becoming a regular, legitimate target for everybody. We are now seeing that we saw that how the Israelis targeted oil facilities in Tehran, and Tehran is under a dark cover of smoke, toxic smoke. We witness how Iranians have retaliated, and this is unfortunately this is very dangerous, because everybody sees escalation and not de-escalation as a path forward.
That was Middle East analyst Sina Azodi. Many thanks indeed for your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.